Let me begin with a question. Albert Einstein said that if he had 1 hour to solve a problem, he'd spend the first 55 minutes making sure he got the question right. So this is for you. What is it you think you might do in these times that would only bring benefit to future generations? Keep that thought in mind. Cathedral thinking. A recent Christmas Eve, my wife Janice and I were in Edinburgh, Scotland, and we went to St. Mary's Cathedral, this beautiful cavernous structure with maybe 1,000 or 1,500 other people there. And afterwards, we got talking about what it must have been like to build this. And that morphed into a chat about cathedral thinking, which is a notion that's been around for hundreds of years. I had a bit more conversation 40 years ago, and then about a decade back, it had a fair amount of attention. But cathedral thinking is still fresh in the minds of many people. I had nothing to do with creating the concept, but I've become somewhat of an apostle for cathedral thinking. So here goes. If in the 1400s you were an architect and your village asked you to design a cathedral, you would undertake that task knowing that you would not live to see that cathedral built. Perhaps your grandchildren would be working on the final renditions, but you wouldn't. If you were a stonemason and you were part of laying those foundation stones and perhaps putting in place the cornerstone, you would know that you were doing that and would not live to see the finishing of your work. But your grandchildren may work on the spire as it came together generations hence. If you were an artisan and you were gathering the glass and working out how to stain it for those beautiful windows that were going to go up, it wouldn't be you in 40 or 50 or 60 or 70 years that placed them as part of the final construct. It would be somebody from another generation that did that. Cathedral thinking is about the long term. It's about doing things today that are important, intrinsically so. It's about shared ambitions. It's about undertaking events or preparations that will only ever be experienced in their fulsome completion by people who aren't even born yet. It is the one way to keep the living generation tethered to the future. New College in Oxford was built in 1369. And part of it was this massive building with big, thick beams that supported the roof. They were there and built to last. And about 100 years ago, they had bugs, and there's sawdust happening. It's a bit of a problem, and they had to be replaced. And the man that was tasked with doing this went to see the college forester. And he said, is there any chance that in the forests that we have, there might be some trees we could use for the new pillars and the new posts and the new beams? And reportedly, the forester said, we've been waiting for you for 500 years. From generation to generation to generation, we passed down the knowledge that in 1369, when that building was created, that grove of trees over there was planted so that it would be big and strong and ready when you needed new beams to replace the roof. Cathedral thinking. In Cologne, the cathedral began construction in 1248 and opened its doors in 1880. The current phase they're hoping to complete in 2026. It is not what we do that matters, it's what we cause to happen. We should all be involved in unfinished work. Jim Rogers, who's the outgoing CEO of Duke Energy, writes about cathedral thinking and talks about it in the context not of the coal business that they're known for, but about renewable energy, about doing today the early development of wind power or solar energy that will one day supply the needs, but not for generations properly, but will one day be environmentally responsible and give what is needed. So cathedral thoughts can be what Rogers has, or what builders have, or it could be about something like the Olympics. Many cities that have bid for the Olympics to be the host city have in fact bid several times before they enjoyed the success of achieving the host city status. That's true for Oslo and Lillehammer, or for Mexico City, or Vancouver, or Salt Lake City, or Pyeongchang in South Korea. Those who launched those first bids did so knowing that they were beginning a process, and that that process would take time and they might not initially be successful. But when they bid for the second time, they built upon the foundation laid in the first bid, and they used those plans. And when it came, like in a Vancouver or a Montreal or a Mexico City, for that third bid to be successful, it was because early people had put in place a dream and ideas and ambitions that could be passed down from generation to generation to generation. And when those cities welcomed the world as the hosts of the Olympics, many of the early visionaries were not alive, but their grandchildren were there to make sure the games worked properly or to compete within them. Those early bidders were cathedral thinkers. So looking back 50 years seems a long time. Looking forward 50 years, if you pick a year to put a marker down, 2067. Not to put too fine of a point on it, but by 2067, most of you will be dead. What was isn't. What is won't be. Like a billion other people on Earth, I'm a grandparent. And Riley and Declan will grow up in one of those many, many countries where they're free to travel from region to region, or to go from a state to another state, or a province to another province. And one day they'll have their country's passport and be able to travel across international boundaries, to keep exploring, to widen their eyes. Travel is the world's synapses. It connects us. And travel sits on the right hand of peace. So why my grandchildren and not everybody's grandchildren? And that brings me to my cathedral thought. There are 216 nations that call this tiny planet their home. Each of us is but one step or two from somebody in every one of those countries. They could be family, or maybe a colleague, or someone we've traveled with or attend a conference with, or a person we sit down next to in a cafe and pick up a conversation. Travel, more than any other activity, takes down the barriers to understanding. Travel is about bringing people together to share ideas and learn from one another, and to celebrate our differences. Tourism is a vital force for peace. It behooves each of us to think about what we can do individually and collectively, so that one day every leader in the world shares in our belief that safe passage and the right to assemble are fundamental freedoms for all people. Thank you very much.